Hello YouTube. Tonight I'm working on a 2012 Honda Odyssey with a 3.5 liter gas engine. This motor should be similar to other years, maybe like 2011 up to 2015 I think. It should all be the same or very similar. So this is just going to be an overview and to show you guys what I had to do to be able to get the alternator out. This particular one right here is a replacement I got from O'Reilly's. In my city, these guys were the only ones that had it in stock, and they were the only ones who could actually test it. So I did take it to AutoZone, 3 different locations as a matter of fact, and none of them, they all blamed their equipment and said, oh, go to the other one down the street. So luckily I do have 3 in my town, but at the end of the day they weren't able to do it. I went over to O'Reilly's and they were able to just hook it up and test it and show that the regulator was bad. So the symptoms that I had, the charge light went on, battery discharged, and it sounded like a loud whirring or humming noise, similar to what a power steering pump without any fluid sounds like those old Fords. I don't know if you can use that for reference, but there's just a loud humming noise. I popped the hood and I could smell kind of like a burning electronic smell, and I knew right away that was going to be it. But just for that assurance, so I didn't waste close to $300, I had to make sure I get it tested first, and sure enough, instincts were right. So this is a little bit backwards in that the vehicle's already disassembled here. You can see I wanted to make sure that I could actually do it and get it done before I made a video, because I really wasn't too sure going into this how I was actually going to pull it out. But what I ended up having to do was actually disconnect the radiator and take the cowling off and everything like that, to be able to yank the alternator out, because there really just isn't enough room. Although it does look like it, there's no way to really jimmy it out of there without messing with like AC lines and all kinds of other stuff. So just not worth the hassle or worth the potential damage to cause to do that, in my opinion. So down here in this little pocket, see if my flashlight's not too light, you can see in the center of the camera down there is, right there, is the lower mounting flange for the alternator. The upper mount is going to be on the side of the cylinder head, just to the left of the dipstick here. There's a bracket, and this bracket is right here. This nut is what the alternator bolts to. This bolt bolts into the cylinder head, and then this little welded nut right here, the wiring harness bolts to it. And you'll see it as I progress through and get it all connected. You'll see what it's supposed to look like. So getting it taken out. To get it taken out, first and foremost, you want to make sure, since we're working with the high amp 12 volt, is disconnect the battery leads disconnect the battery. Here you can see I disconnected the positive. We're working directly with the charge lead on here, so if that thing touches the block and you have it hooked up, it's going to be really bad. Has the potential to be really bad for you. You can see the battery was a little bit dirty. I did put some baking soda on there. That was not my problem. It was actually a bad alternator, but you can see I tried a couple other things before I made up my mind that was it. Taking it out. So the first thing, as I said, disconnect the battery. What I did was I took off the engine cover. You just turn a couple of screws in the corners, which are these little, they lock into right here, and then you just lift it up and pop it out. And the engine cover has plastic studs that plug into here on one side, here on the other. Those grommets usually come out when you pull the cover. They'll just pop out and be attached to the stud. So the first thing you want to do, so you don't run into a headache down the road, just take those grommets off, slap them back in there. You're not going to get the engine cover back on if you try to fix it in there with the grommets on the studs. It's just not going to happen. You're probably going to rip them or something like that. Next, what I had to do was remove the radiator and condenser brackets. So the radiator, here's the radiator bracket. It just bolted right here. Pardon me. Bolted over here. So it's similar mounting. So it just bolted right here, 10 millimeter. Took it right off. You're going to do it for both the alternator and the condenser. This one's the driver's side condenser mount. So it's just like this. And see, on the condenser side and the radiator side, it's just a little rubber grommet. They're not actually bolted in place. They're just kind of held in place there. So, of course, to even access that in the first place, pardon me, you have the cowl mount, or the cowl cover, not a cowl cover, radiator core support cover, which just sits in here like this. So where each one of these holes are is a clip. You just gotta take a screwdriver. Let's see if I can get one. I did end up breaking a couple of these because they were just brittle from being so old, and it's really, really hot where I live. So you just take these clips right here. You're going to use a flathead screwdriver to kind of poke it up, which relieves the tension inside the fitting. And then what I did was I just kind of wiggled it, and they'd pop right out. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And that's in addition to the 2 that are holding the air horn on. So air horn's right there. This hooks up to the air box. There's one of those fittings here and one of those fittings right there. So I guess you could say the first thing to do is take off the tube that goes to the air box. Boom. Take off the radiator shroud or core support cover. And then you get to the radiator, which again, disconnect these 4 bolts right here, and that'll allow you to kind of wiggle the radiator and condenser forward. I ended up taking off the bolts for the grill right here and right here, which again just kind of gave me a little bit of flexibility here. I didn't need to take it all the way out. If I could have, there's just a couple other clips right there if I did need to, but I didn't really think I did. So what I ended up doing was I loosened everything up. I did end up removing the passenger side, the right side radiator fan, which allowed me, just gave me a couple extra inches of room right here. And I had to disconnect the upper radiator hose, which again, it's just, all it is you're trying to get it forward without breaking the radiator, of course, without damaging the radiator, because, these things aren't cheap. Probably looking at a couple $100s to replace this guy. And that alternator being heavy, it'll damage your radiator with a quickness if you drop it against there. So I'll even show you right here where my alternator, it slipped out of my hands, and you can kind of see there's a little streak right there, a little J-shaped, upside down J-shaped streak right there. That's the alternator just sliding down there. And I mean, it could have punched a hole in that easily. This aluminum is really soft. So once everything's loosened and disconnected, you have these 2 mounting holes on the alternator right here. I showed you the tabs earlier. This one's the top. This one right here is the bottom. It's just removing that bolt from the bottom, which was a little bit of a booger. I believe it's a 14 mil. The top one right here, we're going to go ahead and say it was 12 or 13 mil. Most likely a 12 mil, because Japanese vehicles like those a lot. Then this guy right here, I want to say it was also a 12 mil. And this rear connector right here, you just pinched it and pulled it up. So I'll show you the fitting so there's no confusion. What you do not want to do, here's the fitting down here. It's just a standard, you pinch it. My index finger right there is pinching the little tab. You just pinch it and just pull it off. You might have a little bit of suction or something like that, but what you do not want to do is try to pull that alternator out of there with this stuff connected, because you'll end up breaking it. That harness actually goes down to the air conditioning compressor, which you can see down there. That shiny aluminum thing down there. The purple deal, blue purple thing, that's the connector that goes to the alternator. And then down below it, you see the AC compressor, and that green little deal, a green little connector right there. It hooks up to the air compressor, or pardon me, the AC compressor. So if you wanted to, if I wanted to, I could just unclip it and pull it off to the side, but most likely I'd get everything together and then wonder why my AC didn't work. So didn't do that. Be careful when you take all this stuff off. It's not very forgiving, because if you drop one of those bolts, you're going to lose it. What I usually do is I just take the bolts off and I place them up here. Most of them are the same length. and everything like that. You know, they're all the same bolt. So just keep them, just kind of keep an eye on where they should be, and you know, make sure you're not mixing them up, putting one that's too long in or something like that. So here, from here, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the alternator. It's basically going to be the opposite of the way I took it out. As you can see right here, this guy, there's no way this is going down in this hole right here. It looks like it might, and I mean, maybe if I bent this AC line or something like that, or monkeyed with the power steering hose, I could do it, but it's just not worth the hassle and potential damage. I just rather not end up with a bigger repair bill than I already have. So one thing I did neglect to mention, the hood latch. So the hood latch is held up here with 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. I did have to take that off. What I would recommend when you go to take it off, just get a marker or something and scribe the outline of this, so that when you put it back on there, you can line it up properly, so your hood isn't floating or being pulled too far down. You want it to be as close to factory original as possible when you put it together. All in all, I'd rate this is fairly easy. It's not horrible. I've had a lot worse, and over here you can see if I had to replace an alternator over there, it'd be much easier, but not so lucky. No dice on this. So to get this in, all I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna put the phone down, but what I do is with my left hand I hold the alternator, and then my right hand I'm just gonna pull the radiator forward. You don't want to bend it. These things are somewhat flexible, and I mean, really, this stuff is pretty fragile. It's just really thin aluminum, so you don't want to come over here and reef down on it and twist it. I'd highly recommend just pull it in the center and pull it forward. Keep in mind, we got this radiator hose disconnected. There's nothing really holding it on there other than the tension of what's going on down below, keeping it in there. So you have your lower radiator hose and all this other stuff, but I mean, really, I could pull this thing forward about 4 or 5 inches and comfortably get it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause it right now and get it down in there, and I'll continue on.